Maya, 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 Maya.
Hello and welcome to the Euro What, episode number 100 for the week of December 14th, 2020. I'm Ben Smith and I'm joined today by Mike McComb. Hey Mike.
Hello.
We are a pair of Americans trying to make sense of the Eurovision Song Contest, and this week we'll be talking about wrapping up 2020 and sending it far, far, far away.
Yes.
Oh, we get to close the book on this wretched year, Mike.
It's so nice.
It's so nice. And like ultimately, was it the 2020 I expected? No. I feel like it was still a very good year. In its own way. I'm going to immediately walk that one back. In its own way.
This podcast has two hosts.
Podcast has two hosts, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like, it was a weird year. It has ups, it has downs, as do most years, but this one, it just all over the place.
I think the best way to describe it is maybe being car sick.
Yeah. Just going to keep the air sickness bag near me just in case there's one more little bit of turbulence.
Remember flying.
Remember planes.
Yeah.
Also, we've hit 100 episodes. We did that. One of the things we did for our 100th episode is we sent out a call for questions, and we got questions.
Yay.
First, a friend of the show and two-time guest Helen sent us a question. So this is what she wrote. Congrats on 100 episodes. I'm proud to have been a part of it. Quick cue. How do we feel about the Eurovision movie getting a Grammy nomination while the actual Eurovision entries continually get ignored? Surely they'd count towards the world music categories or any of the 100 other ones. I like that we both saw this question come in and immediately was like, this is great, I have thoughts. There's two parts to this question. Sure, the Grammys has world music, or I forget if it changed from global to world or world to global. They made that change this year to try and get away from some of the negative connotations that world music sort of has attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the albums that fit in there, I don't necessarily think of them as pop. I think of them as part of sort of the broader genres of what you can do with music. Like, it tends to be a very specific sort of album that gets picked up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the Grammys advertise themselves as music's biggest night, but there's some really tiny print in front of that because the Grammys are still primarily an American music award show.
Right.
The voting body is largely made up of American music professionals. They tend to have a very American-centric point of view, so it doesn't surprise me that something like the soundtrack to the Eurovision movie got a nomination, especially in a year like 2020 where there wasn't that much visual medium for soundtracks to be placed with.
Right.
I feel like if you looked at the discourse around this year's nominations, the big story this year was that The Weeknd was shut out, but also fans of BTS are just like, they are the number one artist globally. Why are they not getting any Grammy nominations or getting very few? And again,
right.
it's the Grammys have a very American-centric music perspective. A lot of American pop music comes out of places like Sweden and other places where there are plenty of writing camps. When they do get nominations, it tends to be more on like the behind-the-scenes production side.
Where it gets tricky is being members of the Recording Academy, the organization that actually runs the Grammys. And the case with a lot of Eurovision people, they're probably not going to be members of the Recording Academy. I mean, as you said, like, it is primarily an American institution. So unless you're planning on working in America, you're probably not going to sign up for that membership, particularly if you win The Voice of Ukraine or X Factor Malta. If this is your first foray into the world of recorded music, like, that's probably not enough to get in. Like, I think it's just kind of more of an eligibility issue more than anything else. Although it is important to note that the first ever Grammy for both Record of the Year and Song of the Year went to Volare. Yeah, which is such an interesting little tidbit. So far it's the only Eurovision song to win a Grammy and the only foreign language recording to win those top tier awards.
It could be time for a shakeup.
It sounds like they have a lot of housekeeping that needs to happen.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This might not be at the top of the list. So.
Like, there was a lot of controversy last year, and the Grammys said, we're going to fix this, and it's still just a mess.
Thank you, Helen, for sending us that question. Getting into some of the news that's happened in the last couple of weeks. The logo for the 2021 contest has been revealed, and it's sort of a tweaked version of what the logo was for 2020, which, if you think about it, a rainbow asterisk was probably the most on-the-nose thing they could have done for 2020, not realizing what they were predicting.
Hindsight, much like this year, is 2020.
Yeah. This design is kind of using the same data-driven theory.
So with this, like, we've got some lovely arcs sort of going from the various capital cities of Europe into where Rotterdam is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun, and for the idea of opening up, it's a different way of showing people coming together, and I like it.
Yes. I think it's a little bit more pleasing to the eye. I remember when the 2020 logo came out, I kind of was hesitant about it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like a 80s airline design, and this one does feel a little bit more modern and telling a clearer story.
I think it's easier to look at it, think for a minute, and go, oh, those are the paths from one country to another, whereas the other one you had to think, okay, but how is this representing all of the data?
The agency that put the logo together has a really interesting case study that we can have linked to the show notes about like how the design came about and all of the other artsy elements that go into it. If you're a process nerd about logo design type stuff, it's a really cool thing to read.
Israel had 9 songs shortlisted. Online voting has closed. There are going to be 3 finalists, the top 2 from the online vote, plus 1 jury wildcard. And those are going to be revealed in the new year on January 3rd. And then Eden will perform those songs at a national final on January 25th.
Estonia, they revealed their songs on December 5th. Most of those songs are available on Spotify at this point. We're putting together a playlist for the individual countries as well as a master playlist of selection season. And we'll have links to all of those in the show notes as well. Estonia has 24 songs that'll be competing. The semifinals will be taking place on February 18th and February 20th. So you've got plenty of time to sit with the songs, ruminate on them, figure out which ones are your favorites, see if they still hold up 2 months from now. It'll be great. So.
France, they are doing a one-night selection. The songs have dropped as of December 8th. Most of them are on Spotify, and I believe we have a playlist.
Yep.
And then the final will be in January, although we don't know when. And the hosts are Stéphane Bern and Laurence Boccolini, winner of The Masked Singer France Season 1. So that's fun.
Sweden announced the artists, song titles, and writers for upcoming Melfest. We poured over the data for that one. Ben, do you have any initial thoughts on the field?
Looking at the field, I did the number crunching. It was very interesting to see like how many names popped up. A bunch. Like Jimmy Joker Thornfeld.
A lot of songwriting teams that are working with a number of artists. There are a lot of Eurovision alumni that are competing this year. It almost feels kind of like the Tournament of Champions thing that's happening in Estonia as well, where the Mamas will be coming back to try to regain the ticket that they were supposed to have this year. Daughter is in the mix, so there's probably going to be a lot of drama about that. Danny Saucedo and Eric Sade, who, like, I guess are kind of rivals in a way. Anyway, it's just like, this feels so 10 years ago because that was kind of like the last time that they were facing off. Yeah. Charlotte Pirelli's back. There are some new names to Melfest as well, but there's also big names in Swedish pop, like Tusse, who won Swedish Idol 2019, is going to be in the mix. Like, it does seem that they're trying to go for a little bit of variety. Like, they do have a couple of heavy metal or harder rock type bands in the mix. They have bands in the mix. I think that is something.
They have bands in the mix.
Well.
Arvin Garna is back, who represented Sweden in 1993 and have popped up in Melfest from time to time and seem to be fulfilling the dance band quotient, which I'm always happy to see.
Yeah. Looks like it's going to be a pretty good mix. Still waiting to see how these 28 acts are going to get split up across the various semifinals. But everything's going to be happening in Stockholm, and they're probably not going to have an audience in the venue, but they're trying to figure out some sort of virtual wall thing. I'm not sure how that's supposed to work.
I'm just so over Zoom walls full of people.
Yeah.
They're just depressing and dystopian. Please stop doing them. Please stop putting people. Have you seen the video from the Kelly Clarkson show where they're playing a song and they have individual screens of each person in like portrait mode?
It's not just any song, Ben.
No. Yeah, I was about to say, like, so I watched that for the first time with the sound off and was like, well, this is depressing. And then I listened to it with the sound on, and it was Vin Diesel's new single. That's Tropical House.
Oh, yeah, that was...
I'm just like, this is a nightmare. This is...
Yeah, so bleak. Anyway, in terms of other processes that are hopefully not as bleak, Portugal announced their composers for Festival de Canção. They also announced how the semifinals are going to be split. We don't know who the actual artists are yet or what the songs are going to be, but there's a little bit more structure to the spreadsheet, which is nice.
But we know that they have split them into semifinals.
I appreciate these announcements. This is how you do that piecemeal announcement, Cyprus. Okay,
this is how you do it, Cyprus. You don't just like dump everything and then be like, "Bye, we'll see you in March."
Let's see. By the time this episode drops, Croatia will probably have announced which acts will be competing in Dora. The plan is to have 14 acts and 4 backup acts. The backups will fill in case an act withdraws before the Dora rehearsals begin. Final is still scheduled for February 13th. And then Sanremo is announcing their artists on Thursday. And all we know so far is that Diodato is not in the competition. So it will be somebody new representing Italy at Eurovision next year.
Allora. just like I love that is now just a Pavlovian response my brain has after 2020 is just that just the mention of Italy.
Yeah.
The mention of Italy.
I wonder if that's been the thing that has kept Italy from winning the last several years. Where it's like, oh, their songs are so good, but then it's like there's just enough people voting.
Enough people who are still shell shocked from 1991.
They are saving us from ourselves, So
we think we know what we want.
The next big process thing that's going to be happening is Festivali Këngës. It's scheduled for Monday the 21st, Tuesday the 22nd, Wednesday the 23rd. Since it's coming up, we should probably make some picks based on the 26 entries that are going to be competing in this year's festival.
Last time we talked about Albania, and you asked me what I remembered about Albania, and my mind just blanked, just became a void. The other thing that I was going to mention is that I remembered that oftentimes the songs will get performed in multiple styles, and this is still the case because we have one night that's orchestral and one night that is acoustic, which is somehow different from orchestral.
And I've not seen any sort of clarity on what the difference is supposed to be. I don't know, maybe the second night's guitars?
Solo guitar at a party edition.
It could work. I think that might work with some of these, but yeah. And then night 3 will be the final. We don't know how, all 26 songs will perform on night 1. They'll all perform again on night 2. We don't know how many are going to make it to the final in night 3. It's always kind of a wild card. I think last year they said that there'll be 10 and then there ended up being 12. Yeah, it's Albania's a loose cannon playing by its own rules.
Anything can happen.
Yeah. Both of us have gone through all 26 entries and made some picks on what we like.
Yes. Yeah. So just thinking about our last episode, one thing that came to mind, Metana, and how it just sort of revealed to me that, Albania could be sending an ethno-banger, just at any time if they wanted to. I feel like having listened to The Field, I would very much like an ethno-banger from Albania. 26 songs from one country is a lot to listen to.
Yes.
Looking over some of the details of the contest, looking at the jury this year, saw that both Jonida Maliki and Eugent were both on the jury this year. And having listened to Mal recently, I hear that a lot in a lot of the entries they have. And I limited myself to 2 picks, but I also liked what Florent Abrashi was putting down. As far as the entries that sounded like Mal, I liked what he was doing with Vajay. The one that really spoke to me, and the more I sit with it, the more I realize it's the one that sounds the most like Think About Things to me, of all things, is Angie Nasufi's Yo Soy. We're going to talk about Spotify later, and this just sort of ties in with a lot of my Spotify listening this year. I've been listening to more up-tempo things. I've been listening to dancier things because I've been inside the house a lot, and it's been a way to lighten the mood. Mm-hmm. I would like countries to send their best up-tempo bop, and
yes,
this one spoke to me.
Yeah, I'm interested about the Think About Things connection, because
Okay.
that it definitely feels very 2020, and it's kind of in the same space that Dua Lipa is occupying right now. And
Yes,
it feels like, I don't want to say that it's like a clone of her. No, it's like that Albanian pop that is all the rage right now.
I would, yeah, like I would say definitely would have been in like the writing room with Dua Lipa, or would have been like in the conversation for like the Kylie Minogue disco album, where like it's very much in that same space, and with like a few other artists I was listening to a lot this year. Go back and listen to it. Hold in the back of your mind the idea of Think About Things, and much like the FedEx arrow, it will appear.
I also tried to limit myself to 2, but really this was the only one that jumped out where it was, no, Albania needs to send this, is Mirud's Nosevdes.
Një pendim nga ti e pres Se sa ere ti ma ke vrap Jam rin shumë me qty me t'pa
This one definitely has that Think About Things. I wrote down in my notes Dothymetrics. Like, this feels so constructed for Eurovision. And it has the elements of Metana that I think everybody was responding to last year in terms of it being an ethno banger. I get kind of a Soldi vibe from it.
I like both of those.
Yeah, and it just feels so calculated and calibrated for Eurovision because it's only like 2 minutes 45 seconds.
Going over the field as a whole, I was looking at songs that were like 4.5 minutes long and going, okay, if you win, you have to cut out like a decent chunk of your song. Even Angie Nasufi, like that song is 3.5 minutes.
It just feels so spot on, and it's such an earworm for me as well. Like it has been in my head for the past 48 hours, and I really like this one, and so that's why I was kind of surprised that the one that you suggested as being Think About Things. It's like, I didn't catch that at all. But the other thing about Mirud's entry is that one's on Spotify and Angie's isn't. So
I need to go back and listen to Mirud's again, because maybe it was just the mood I was in last night when I was going over these again, where I did not pick up that Think About Things thing. But I'm wondering, just sort of as a whole, is if all of the countries are going to look at what Iceland did this year, and if that is the new Fuego clone.
Oh, interesting.
That's a high level of difficulty to pull off, because I think Think About Things is so idiosyncratic, having listened to more of Dothy's work this year.
Right. That's kind of why I wanted to start using the term Dothymetrics, because I think
I love that. I love that. We're keeping that one.
That is definitely something to keep an eye on and maybe be concerned about, because I don't know if I want Eurovision built in a lab, especially if it's going to be 26 entries.
Especially if it's if everybody is doing that. Yeah, like that. Yeah, could get exhausting.
Were there any other ones that caught your ear?
Yeah, the other one, and I'm gonna just butcher the pronunciation of this because I cannot roll my R's, and you definitely have to roll your R's for this one. Era Rusi's Jarim. This one was in the same kind of ethno-bangery space and reminded me of Metana. That is what I want from Albania in my heart of hearts, is I want Metana. And like this one has like the same sort of slower intro, and then when it gets going, it gets going.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Like in my notes, I have like feels bombastic, like but I'm not sure if it is bombastic.
The thing that really grabs me, the promo pictures for this set of entries is just fascinating, and I want to know like what the process is for them. But this one in particular, she's in a dress, and like the right sleeve of the dress has a bunch of melted candles, and like the candles are lit, or at least the appearance of melting candles.
Yeah, I had that in my notes as well, that hers was the most interesting of the contestant photos.
Is this something we're going to see in the live performance?
I kind of doubt that.
I kind of doubt that as well. It seems like a very cool promo picture. End of story.
Yeah, really, I think this one is going to come down to the live performance. I think the studio track is fine, and hearing it live, I think, could elevate it, but it could also just
also do the opposite.
Yeah. So the high risk, high reward, I guess, would be the best way to describe the song. If it were to win, I wouldn't be upset about it.
What was your other favorite, Mike?
The other one that kind of caught my ear, I don't know if this is necessarily praise or not, but Evie Raichi's Year. I think this year I'm also going to create a playlist of all of the entries that sound like theme music or promo music for TV shows, since there always seem to be a handful of those every year. And yeah, my immediate note for this entry was it sounds like the Shondaland promo theme when Shonda Rhimes was still at ABC. Like I could see this be like the soundtrack for the ads for season 3 of How to Get Away with Murder or something.
I'm so glad that selection season has started and we get to start cooking up the weirdest comparisons again.
I think the song is fine. I could take it or leave it, but I think the fact that it could be used in that capacity means that it has some sort of hook to it, or it's a strong enough pop song where it can work in other contexts, you know?
Okay. 26 is a lot of songs to go through, and like I would just knowing that like not all of these are going to make the final. I don't want to get too attached to one of these, because what I want out of Albania this year is not what the majority of the field is. So Albania and I just maybe don't see eye to eye in 2021, and that's fine.
Especially with the way that songs win at FIK. Like there's no audience vote or anything. It's all jury vote, and it's very difficult to tell like what the jury is looking for. So who knows? All 4 of these may not make it to the final. I kind of doubt that that's going to be the case. Like these are all quality songs, and really like the whole field. Really looking forward to FIK, and not just because it's like the first Eurovision thing of the season. Even in normal times, this is a very strong field, and this is going to be a very fun contest to watch.
Yes. Thinking about the Eurovision songs from this year, have you looked at your Spotify Wrapped, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
it's a disaster.
Yours is a disaster. Okay. I will tell you how I completely broke my Spotify Wrapped this year. I hesitate to call it a ritual because I now no longer listen to this, but like there was a period in the summer, and I think I was just getting particularly stressed out from the quarantine and the pandemic and life in general, and like added a bunch of stuff to an all instrumentals playlist, affectionately referred to as yoga ass music. But then I got super into listening to Eric Hall's one-man rendition of Steve Reich's music for 18 musicians, and was listening to that every weekday for 10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I eventually diversified that list of what I was listening to in the morning while I had my coffee and did the crossword and stuff like that. Realized in late September, Spotify Wrapped is going to catch all of that. And Spotify Wrapped usually wraps up its tabulation at the end of October. So
you had no time to fix that.
It had no time to pick up. Like, I mean, it did pick up some stuff that I was listening to. There were a bunch of songs where I would just like listen to them on repeat for. I took the playlist Spotify gave me of my top songs of 2020 and then made a new version of the list, cutting out all of music for 18 musicians, cutting out all of the other things from my instrumental playlist, where I'm just like, okay, yes, I did listen to these a lot, but like it's not reflective of what else I was listening to. I'm pretty sure that had I listened to only the English version of Think About Things, it probably would have been my top song. But I split the vote on myself by listening to it both in English and in Icelandic because I am that kind of hipster. Also in my top 10, Gabrielius Vagelis' Tave Shamrandu from Pabandum Is Now. Spotify had like a new thing this year where they pointed out a track that you were listening to before it hit 50,000 streams. The one I had for that was the first track on Keinu's album from this May.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which that song is very good. Highly recommended. There were a lot of artists this year, like Dua Lipa is the one who got all the Grammy nominations. Jessie Ware is the one that I've been checking every end of year and Grammy list for, because I thought what she did on What's Your Pleasure was, if Dua Lipa's album is like the disco album for the people in their 20s, Jessie Ware's is definitely like the 30-year-old one. And then Rasheen Murphy's Rasheen Machine. All were in like the same vibe this year, and like different times of the night at like the same party. I think the Dua Lipa is early in the night, Jessie Ware is sort of late night, and then the Rasheen Murphy is just sort of getting to like early morning. It's great.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, my Wrapped, it was just such a mess. I mean, like, I think part of it is like in preparation for this podcast, like getting ready for an episode where we're talking about selection season. I'm listening to those specific playlists multiple times and pulling clips for the show. So my top track was Attention, which, okay. And I mean, and also part of that is just like, well, Norway's process. Oh yeah, I should clarify. It's Norway's Attention, not Lithuania's Attention. I know I've said in the past how much I love Lithuania.
Either of those is possible.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so it's just like, that was my top track. And then Spotify Wrap will also say like how many times you listen to the song. And I think like my number was just 6, which, okay, number 1, how does that make it my top track? Because I know there are other songs that I've listened to many more times, so I'm not even sure what they are considering a play in this data. And then going through the playlists that they made, the first non-Eurovision final song that it was actually going to compete at Eurovision this year, number 25 was a song by We All Poop.
I thought we were never going to have to say that phrase again on this podcast.
Yeah, I was delighted to see that was the case. There was actually a lot of the Czech selection was in the list, but again, that was in January, so had a lot of time to build up those plays, and it was also like a good set of 8 songs. So there was a lot of stuff from the Czech selection, a lot of stuff from Lithuania's selection. Drip was number 29.
Drip was also on mine.
Definitely non-Eurovision. Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters. I don't think it showed up on my list at all. It's like, oh, I know I listened to that several times. So yeah, I think my individual Wrapped was more warped than Wrapped, but we'll take Spotify's word for it.
What songs have changed for you, either in a good way or in a bad way?
I don't know if there's been so much of a shift. I mean, there are some that have stuck with me longer, but I think that might have happened in a normal year. The one that I think I have the most profound reaction to is Tears Getting Sober. And I think part of that is when that song came out, that was during Geek Bowl weekend. And like you were in town and we were having like the Panopticon watching of like all of the national finals at the same time. Again, do not recommend. But I also made a lot of food during that and just made like these spinach pie things. And there was like a lot of really interesting smells in my apartment and so much activity going on at the time. And that was when Tears Getting Sober dropped. And I just have such a strong sense memory when I listen to that song. And it's like one of the last things to happen before everything shut down. And it's just like, oh, this is like the last thread of the before times. And
this is the Last Normal Days soundtrack.
Yeah. And just thinking of like that song, like having that distinction, it's like, I mean, it was a song that I already really liked. I compared it to Fiona Apple in a number of ways. And it has a profound effect, but I don't know. I still don't know how it kind of stacks up in the overall catalog of Eurovision songs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. How about for you?
The ones that have surprised me are the ones that I feel like I dismissed early on and that over the course of the year have become delightful every time they pop up on my Spotify playlist. Because like Chains on You, I feel like I was very mean to every time it pops up on my playlist. It's delightful. I think I've talked about on the show how David Na has grown on me. The Best in Me still feels like a Folgers ad. Still down for it. My Last Breath, I think, was already sort of near the wheelhouse of the type of British pop I listen to. It'll get started and I won't realize that it's James Newman and like then I will just let it finish playing. The Roop's On Fire has just been okay when it pops up for me now.
Yeah.
That one kind of burned hot and I'm not sure that it necessarily had the longevity we thought it did.
It was on fire and now it is.
And now it is not. Yeah, Story of My Life. Do I think it would have made the final? Unclear. Does it sound like something that should be playing over like the end credits of like a high school movie? Yes. Is it still a lot of fun? Yes.
I think I would agree that one has been a grower. Like I do like it more than I did initially, and I know I really did not care for it initially.
And then the one that I have like a weird relationship with now is Still Breathing, because now I just look at the image of Samantha Tina's dancers with like their Windex and their face visors. It was like, what did she know?
Yep.
What did she know?
I mean, everything about it is just like, oh, like 2020 in a nutshell.
And like, I like the live performances of that one more than I like the studio version of the track. And I don't know if it's just because I like the part of the song and the performance where it just feels like my TV is having a seizure.
She is living her best life. And
she is living her best life. And I'm so excited to see what she has cooked up for 2021.
Yeah.
And also the other indelible moment I have attached to that song is the person on Twitter who did a mashup of that and the Terminator 2 scene with the nuclear bomb. And it's just so wonderfully timed.
Yeah.
Thank you, person on Twitter who did that.
Woo! What I'm really looking forward to is seeing how the 2020 songs get presented in the ESC250. Like I think that's going to be, it's going to be a different countdown this year than previous years. I'm hoping for some shakeups.
Mm-hmm. I would love some shakeups.
We both submitted ballots. We tweeted those out earlier. I have a feeling we used different processes to come up with our 10.
Yeah, I can walk through my process. I voted on the day that things were closing. What I did is I sat down and I started with the 2020 songs and then just sort of scrolled through the Spotify playlist. I build a Spotify playlist every year and I add stuff to that. And I've been adding a lot of Eurovision Again things. And literally just sat down and had like a pad of paper in front of me and was just like writing down songs. And like if one song would spark the idea of another, just like kept doing that, went over to my iTunes, sort of scrolled through those, thought of, okay, what songs immediately come to mind and I immediately have a strong response to, and ended up with a long list of like 40 songs, roughly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then what I did is I popped them into the tool that I often use when we are making our rankings for the normal Eurovision season that randomizes and gives me 2 at a time, and like started doing that with them.
Oh, no.
Which for 40 songs is a lot of... But very quickly realized as I was getting into that, like, okay, so like mentally I am like choosing specific songs like every time I see them show up, regardless of what they're against. Let's go back and let's think about what those songs are and just do this with those instead of doing this big long exercise that you're still sort of mentally controlling anyways.
Right.
So cut that down to about 12 songs, and I didn't have any rules around the number of entries from a given country, which, again, if you look at the screenshots of our ballots, it's very obvious which one is mine. Mine is the one that has like 4 songs from Iceland on it.
Yeah.
The 10 that I selected, I'm pretty good with. If I could make one change to my ballot, I would probably drop Fuego, just because Fuego is going to get enough votes. It does not need my help. And I probably would have added in Samantha Tina, just because I do like the idea of that song, even if the recorded version is not my favorite rendition. My favorite rendition is the one where it's her performance on that rooftop from the At Home series, where it's her with a live drummer and she's just living her life.
I'm not sure if you saw the one where it was the Spanish home concerts and like she was like total wine and energy. Like she was just like inside her apartment.
She's just like inside her apartment and there's like too many candles and she's in a fringe outfit. That thing could go up at any second.
Yes.
Okay,
that one is my favorite. But
that one is also very good. But yeah, the ones that just missed the mark were Ping Pong's Be Happy, which the live version of that song is not great, but like that one has just like drilled its way into my brain. And like the recorded version is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then Ding a Dong.
My process was stupid, but it was
I mean, this is a very silly thing. So it's,
yeah. I mean, the whole thing is like it's just limiting it to 10, particularly because I mean, I've been covering Eurovision songs since 2010, so that's like almost 500 songs there. Then you have all of the Eurovision Again stuff throwing all sorts of new stuff at me specifically. No, but I mean, it's just like there's just so many things to choose from. It's like only 10. So try to make a short list, 1 song from each country. There's definitely recency bias going into that. And then there are some countries where it's just like, well, I don't have any exposure to Andorra because they've never made it to the final. And I'm not going to do like extra deep research on this. I got to get this ballot in. It doesn't feel like there's that much change in my ballot from last year to this year. The only new piece in the conversation, I would say, is Sappho's Visionary Dream, Georgia's entry in 2007. And man, oh man, that is just such a fantastic performance. And yeah, it was also Georgia's debut.
I was about to say, such a great debut.
Yeah. It's just like Georgia has entered the chat. And if anything, it's like with my list, I think it's putting high value on songs that are like kind of non-traditional in form, or like trying to introduce something that is not a typical Eurovision entry. And that one, I fully give credit to Eurovision again for introducing me to that, because I don't think I would have discovered it otherwise, or appreciated it the way that I appreciate it now.
Same for me and Sufi. Like, Sufi needs to be on my ballot somewhere, just because that is the one from Eurovision again. Watching Twitter react to that song in real time as we all discovered this was great. But then the person, again, shout out to Eurovision Twitter this year, the person who made the fan cam of Mr. Neff with Sufi as the backing music. Yeah. And Tuto as the video game villain that ruins things. I'm really excited about listening to this, and like particularly since it's just like, well, I'm not going to be doing anything else on New Year's Eve day, so just firing up ESC radio and listening along with everybody else. So I want to see how much Eurovision again shakes up the 250. Yeah, how did we end up getting into all of this Eurovision stuff anyway? Yes. I told you that I had a question from past me. Yes. I'm trying to remember what the exact context for why I was listening to Ozone's Dragostaj Dinte. It popped up, and all of a sudden I was like, when did this song come out? Specifically, when did the Numa Nuba dance, which is how the world at large learned more about the song, when was that a thing? Right. And that was like somewhere in like the early mid 2000s. Right. When I had to watch this, I was on a 56K internet connection, and we had to wait for the Flash video to load. In my day, we waited for the Homestar Runner cartoon to load, and we liked it. Like, I was looking up the details of Ozone's Dragostaj Dinte. Oh, this is a Moldovan song. I've liked Moldova's music for years, it turns out. Huh. Ozone is Moldovan. The song is in Romanian. Oh, okay. But you can probably put a direct line between that and me finding Eurovision a few years later. That makes a ton of sense. Yes, and around the same time, another thing that I think was also probably on Newgrounds, because I don't remember originally watching on YouTube, is Bass Hunter has a song called, well, actually it has like a full Swedish name, but it's mostly just known as Dota. There is an Instagram person that does a weekly stories thing called Vine Magazine. That is just a mashup of content that's happening on the TikTok, and that is the only way that I consume most TikTok content. And they were playing this one clip, and it was something that was using the melody from Dota, but wasn't Dota, that immediately just like put another light on in my brain of just like, this was also happening in 2006 around the same time you were listening to Numa Numa. Dota is a song about people sitting in their rooms on Ventrilo playing Dawn of the Ancients, LAN party stuff, basically. This song is entirely in Swedish. I did not play Dota. I did not have the internet connection to do LAN games, and yet I consumed this culture, and I think, and then I had like a third one I thought of when I was out on a walk today that does feel like a much more direct connection, because she did ultimately end up representing Germany, but also around 2007. That was about when Cascada hit America. Right. Have you watched the video for Every Time We Touch recently? Recently, no. Is that the one that's like a football thing? I might be confusing it with something else. That might be a different Cascada song. This one's like a sexy library party. Those three words. The video is very 2007. The video is very 2007, and like unlike other music videos on YouTube. They have not remastered it, so it is in very poor quality.
Oh, awesome. I will have to check that one out. Well, it's interesting that you bring up all the music videos because the way that I became radicalized, I am the youngest of 7 kids. And so growing up, there was a lot of MTV in the house because it was the 80s. And highly recommend I Want My MTV by Craig Marks and Rob Tannenbaum, which is like an oral history.
It's very good.
Anyway, always been interested in music videos. Around, I want to say this was like 99 or 2000, we started getting this channel called World Link TV. Every so often they would have like a hour-long block of music videos, and they would be music videos from around the world. Like no real rhyme or reason. It was, I think it was just a case of just like, oh, we have this tape. Let's just throw it in the VCR, that sort of thing. And there was this one video for this song called Gamen by this Swedish group called Garmarna. There was just something about the music that just really spoke to me. Like it just kind of had like just the electronicness of it, but then like you could just sort of tell that there was like a storytelling element in there. There's just so much going on in this one track. It's like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on here? And yeah, I think it just kind of like caused me to pay a little bit more attention to stuff that was happening outside of the US. And I think it was also around the time that I was like kind of into anime. So like listening to a lot of J-pop, a lot of really bad J-pop, but J-pop nonetheless. And also like being like really into Dance Dance Revolution at the time. So beginning of the 2000s, like having access to Audio Galaxy, and anytime somebody in my college dorm was just like, oh, have you heard this song? It's like, oh, I don't know, go download it. And yeah, so just being really receptive to whatever songs are out there. It's like, oh yeah, this sounds interesting. Let me just grab that and see how it goes. And I think it was just sort of a natural progression at that point. Eurovision was going to be inevitable. Just from the random crossover. Like I'm sure Cascada probably would have been a gateway at some point. Like if I hadn't picked up Eurovision at 2010, maybe would have become aware of it in 2013. Be like, oh, Cascada, I've heard of them. What are they up to? Oh, what's this thing that they're doing? It's crazy that we've done this for 3 years, and I think we've got another 3 years in us.
At least another 100 episodes. I'm happy to see 2020 off. I'm excited to what 2021 brings.
I'm optimistic. I hope everybody's optimistic.
Yes.
We need optimism.
That's going to do it for this episode and this year of The Euro What. Thanks for listening. The Euro What podcast is hosted by Ben Smith, that's me, and Mike McComb.
That's me.
You can subscribe to The Euro What on the podcast app of your choice. When you subscribe, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and help other Eurovision fans find us. You can contact us through our website at eurowhat.com and on social media at EuroWhat. We will be on Twitter during Eurovision again, Festivali, Këngës, and the ESC250 Countdown. We'll be back in your podcast feed in January. We've made it to 2021, y'all.